Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Cliff Lipple. I'm a partner with PwC in our Salesforce consulting practice focused on asset and wealth management. I'm joined here by Miranda and Kristen from PwC as well. Flash us up here, our panelists today. So just to set the stage for what we're here to talk about, the topic of the session is listening to users, right? So the three of us together have led an implementation at Stifel now for the last couple of years. What we're here to talk about is primarily a user adoption-focused conversation, how we designed a system specifically for the end user, which is the advisor, how we went about that uniquely, how we enabled change management and training and communications, et cetera, not just up front, but continuously as well. So hopefully you'll find this certainly interesting. We'll have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. But for those of you who maybe aren't as familiar with Stifel primarily, Miranda, why don't you give us a little background on Stifel as a company and maybe why you chose PwC as your partner?
Sure. So Stifel Financial has been around for over 130 years. Over the time, we have definitely grown. It's been a growth company. We do wealth management, capital markets, banking, trust, all of the financial components, if you will. So as we kind of looked at this implementation, which is around our wealth management practice, we really looked for a partner who understood a little bit about how we look at our users and how we look at wealth management. So at Stifel, it's extremely important that we put our client first. Everything we build is client first, advisor first. That we really believe in that philosophy. And as we looked for an implementation partner, that's where we found PwC and Kristen and Cliff, who really understood the practice of wealth management as well as the Salesforce application and believed in what we were trying to do.
Great. And since Stifel is such an old company, 130 years of being a financial services firm, you've, over the years, just so many systems that you've kind of gathered. How did you go about, choosing Salesforce and, deciding kind of where to go first, what to work on first? There's just a ton that you could have tackled. So how did you go about that?
Sure. In the wealth space, right, especially in a full service firm where we offer a lot of products and a lot of services, there's always a technology out there that does something well. Performance reporting, right? There's somebody who's really good at that. There's somebody who's really good at financial planning. So over the years, as we've acquired firms, as we've added new products and services, the advisor desktop in their space got really disparate. So when you went to our advisors' offices and you sat with them, you saw very quickly their swivel chair effect, how they were constantly, didn't have enough monitors, couldn't get between applications, and most of the technology in our space is account driven. So you have to know the account number, so you have to go through all of those pieces. We started looking for a way to consolidate that advisor experience. How do we kind of bring things together, look at the flow, look at the customer, and look at the client, and make it more client-centric versus advisor or versus account-centric? So I say all the time, you don't call your advisor and say, this is Mary 1234. Can you tell me what this particular stock is doing? No, you want to know about your portfolio. You want to know everything within that portfolio. So we were looking for a way to bring all of that together and kind of foster that single pane of glass, if you will, and place to start the process. And where Salesforce really came in as their core functionality being a CRM, what better way, a customer's first to us, we need to start with that relationship. So everything we do, we think about the relationship first, we think about the customer first, and then try to think about what they would do throughout the day. So that's where Salesforce, doing that foundation the first couple of years of taking all of this account-centric data from different cores and different pieces and trying to serve that up into that client portfolio, if you will, and relationship.
Okay. So you'd say from a priority standpoint, as we put the roadmap on, you talked a little bit about the foundation. Can you talk a little bit more about how you prioritized with the advisor in mind?
Sure. When we started, I said we put the advisor first, right? So when we first started this and started thinking about what do we want to build, we went out and did a survey first. We have over 2,000 advisors, and then we have lots of client service associates, which are essentially sales assistants, right? So we have a lot of advisor teams. So we picked 600, I believe, to start, and we sent out a basic survey. But that survey was really around best practices. We didn't ask about technology. We didn't ask about platforms that we had. We essentially wanted to know, what is most important to you in your business? What's your best philosophy, right? What do you do every day? How do you keep your clients engaged? And we kind of gathered that information. We took that, found kind of the top answers, and then went out and did one-on-one conversations with those groups and found out a little bit more. So then from there, again, we went back to the first thing we need to do is figure out a way to show the entire relationship. So when a client calls, the advisor has everything at their fingertips to know that, Sally is married to Steve and they have 3 kids and 2 grandkids and all of these pieces, because that is what the relationship is all about in those pieces. So that was really our foundation, which isn't fun, which was tough, because when you build a foundation like that, there's not a lot of wows, right? It is great that we brought that together, but now what? So I always say we're past the foundation, right? We're headed into the fun stuff, if you will.
Yeah, and I think, the foundation is so important, because anyone kind of getting started on their Salesforce journey, or even if they're down the ways a bit, getting that foundation right with the right data that the users could actually trust was really important, I think, to the Stifel implementation. Yeah, it didn't wow them, but we've never really had a situation where advisors log in and say, this isn't my client's accounts, this isn't what the household should look like. There's a lot more trust there behind that. And another thing that's super unique about Stifel is they don't mandate the use of Salesforce to their advisors or their CSAs. So one thing that's really important, and we've already talked about it a little bit. This is Salesforce is built for the advisors. We say it's built for the advisors by the advisors. So how are some ways that you've gone about making sure that they feel that we have built Salesforce for them?
Sure. I think you make a great point on the data accuracy, right, and that foundation. Teams spent hours and hours and hours debating conversations as granular as Stifel has 10 different emails in this system. Which one's the right one, right? And how do we really give that information accurately back to the advisor teams, but then give them the ability to tell us what's right and what's wrong? So it was kind of a cleanup process through some of that kind of as well. So when we looked at that and looked at the relationships and all of those pieces, we really went out and talked a lot about our client life cycle and what you can do with that information now that you have it, right? So we've correlated all this information. We've given you some of this information. Now let's give you use cases on why this is important to you. Why do you care, right? Being a firm with 130 years, we have advisors who are set in their ways, I'll say it that way, right? So we've gone out to the offices and we've seen a lot of stuff. And putting their notes in a system wasn't always top of mind. They had Post-its, they had file folders that have information on the outside. So trying to get them to change and see the importance of putting that information in a system to share it really was challenging, without a doubt. But if you focused on, okay, now you have a team of 4 people, you don't have to go to each person and say, did you guys talk to Harry? Did Harry call today? Or if it's in the system, that person automatically knows, oh, you've already talked to my partner today, and you've talked about X, Y, Z, and it really magnifies that relationship again. The goal is for the customer to really be like, hey, I'm this broker's #1 fan. Like, all they do is pay attention to me, if you will.
So tell me a little bit about we've got the foundation, right? I think you've talked, hit on a lot of the core capabilities of Salesforce. What are some of the unique, things that have come into the system over time? Some of the unique things Stifel specifically has done as part of the implementation.
Sure. You'll notice that our name of our department is Technology Product Development, right? So just in our philosophy in general, we saw several years ago the importance of bringing technology and the business together, right? And not calling it technology and the business, but it's really, we're there to service the advisors in whatever capacity that we can from that aspect. And as we looked at all these disparate systems and what an advisor needs to do from day to day, we talk a lot about the client life cycle, if you will, right? Every client has a life cycle, and that life cycle continues to go. So you prospect, you plan, you propose, you then implement, open the account, get everything set up, you service it on an ongoing basis, and then you report. right? You have to give reports on how their accounts are doing and how that portfolio is doing within your book, if you will. So when we look at things and our partners come to us and say, we want to do X, Y, Z in financial planning, we always walk through that process. What do we need to do? What in each stage is going to happen? And then how do we integrate the right data in the right place? Not as simple as, let's do an integration and throw a button out here and now you can get to our financial planning software. It's more about when in your process is it the most important to you, right? We've learned through the years for sure is you can have sensory overload very easy if you put too much information on the same page or in the same spot. So you need to really help people who aren't naturally techie know when that information is important to them through that process. And that's been a game changer, in all honesty. That we just did a panel for our Women's Advisor Conference and talked about those pieces and had some advisors talk about that. And they really were very thankful of having that because it allows their team as well to have a checklist, if you will, right? Client calls, they know exactly in that process where that is and how that opportunity is moving.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what Marina's talking about, a lot of our clients we talk to, they call this an advisor desktop. Really, it's just how do you bring the 15 systems that an advisor has to access every day, how do you bring all of that into Salesforce? And you're not rebuilding their financial planning in Salesforce. You're not rebuilding their performance reporting in Salesforce. It's connecting Salesforce to that information so it's easy for them to get to. And when they do need to go out to those other systems, it's directly linked from Salesforce. So that's how we think of the advisor desktop. And so this is like a huge amount of change for advisors. You know, what are some things that we've done to help make this a little bit easier for them?
We've changed ourselves, right? I think is the big thing. As we went through, we were excited about Salesforce. We thought it was great, wonderful, right? So we went out and we told everybody we had it. We sent out emails, we sent out tutorials, all of these things, right? And then we looked at our adoption metrics and we were all really sad, especially when our boss was like, what's going on here? Because change is hard to those pieces. So being a firm that really tries to allow our advisors the space to be who they are and run their business how they are, when we implemented Salesforce, we kept that in mind. We didn't force them to do certain things. We kept the customization there. Well, what that does from the training side is it's not as easy to train anymore because there's so many different opportunities there. So we started offering, we went out to some branches, we spent some time with people and their teams to talk about their practice and how, okay, here's what I do today. Okay, well, here's what you can do in this system, right? And here's how that goes. It's difficult because that's not scalable, but we kept doing those things. We offer kind of one-on-one calls, if you will, with the team, and we continue to talk through those pieces. Adoption still isn't exactly where we want it to be. We're totally transparent about that, but we did have a huge realization that as technology becomes more and more important in business and really drives business, for lack of a better term, it's important for us to invest in the right associates who understand our business model and understand what advisors do and understand the technology and can link that together. And that's an investment that is important that we look forward to in the future.
Yeah, I think what we've tried to do and maybe what's important from that is really meeting the users where they are, right? So it's not just about virtual training, it's not just about recorded training or classroom training, right? It's really a number of ways that they can engage, right? Whether that's one-on-one with their teams or meeting them in person, virtually, in a classroom setting. There's a lot of different ways that we've gone about doing that, a lot of different ways we've looked at communication. You talked about adoption isn't quite where you want it to be, and I'm sure there's a few folks in the audience who probably feel the same way about their own implementation. But I think when we talk to different folks about where they are in their adoption today, right, you'll hear different things. Some will say we don't have an adoption problem because we force them to use the system, right? We've got the stick approach. If it didn't happen in Salesforce, they don't get paid kind of approach, right? Stifel hasn't taken that approach. So to that end, right, it's really been about the system needs to generate value for the advisor. We want them to want to use the system, right, has kind of been the approach. So maybe if we're not using the stick, we're clearly using the carrot. What are some of the things Stifel has done to entice users to use Salesforce?
Sure. I think you're exactly right. When we did our implementation, we met with a lot of other people who've done the implementation, and all we ever heard was, we have to force them to use it. That's how it works, right? And that's not our philosophy at Stifel. We really believe, again, that advisors run their own business practice and should use the tools that they need to use. But it's our job to show the value in the tools that we're creating and making sure that we're helping their business model, if you will. And so from that aspect, I think we're definitely, adoption is moving forward. And it is because, I'll go back to, when you build the foundation, people don't just come to it, right? Just like if you build a house, you build the foundation, you've still got more to do. You've still got, you get the fun stuff. You get to pick out the colors in the bedroom, but not on the foundation. You don't see the end. It's hard to vision where you're going. Now that we're adding in more of those flows and those processes of, here's where I can see this information, and showing that if you use this system correctly and you really manage your business through this system, it's going to keep you organized. And we talk about that. That is a key to us that we talk about a lot of times, is this platform is going to help organize your business. It's not going to tell you how to do your business. We're not going to use it to check up on you. Management doesn't even have access to Salesforce in our world. It's a tool for the advisors. And so the more we add in things and show the value of why it's important. I'll use an example of, we have a platform, it's an advisor platform, and it's great. It's the state of the art in the industry, but it is very difficult to use. So in that case, everybody knows they should use it, but they don't want to take the time to use it. So what we did in that case is took some of the pertinent data in that system and put it in Salesforce in the place that made the most sense when an advisor or their team would go to look at it. That within itself is one of the carrots, because now not only am I getting adoption in this platform that is difficult to use, but I know the information in it is really good, I'm also getting my adoption in Salesforce by bringing the two together to make their life easy. They have their job is to satisfy their relationship and work on their relationship, not to figure out our technology and the different places to look at it.
Yeah, and I think we've done a lot to make sure, the advisors do feel, and some other ways that we've done it is we are constantly going back out to them, asking them for feedback, talking to them directly, walking the advisor and their teams through some Salesforce, some training, but also then saying, what would you like to see next? That's kind of what we put at the forefront. I mean, if we're going to go out there and say this Salesforce is built for advisors by advisors, we're constantly asking them for their feedback, and kind of they're a key part in helping to prioritize what's next on the roadmap. So we've talked a lot about Salesforce being built for advisors. How do you go about kind of connecting? So Salesforce is the key tool for advisors. Then you have Wealth Tracker, which is your key client, your client portal, where they can log in and see all the information. How do you go about kind of connecting those two experiences?
That's a really important piece. It really is. And when we started on both of these journeys with our technology platforms, we kind of started on our client portal first. We used to do an outsourced portal. We outgrew it. We wanted the control. Started building in-house, right? That was probably 4 years ago. Started that. We started our Salesforce journey for the advisor side about 2 years ago. But remember, we're a full-service brokerage firm, so the advisor in that relationship is key. So as we got both foundations done, we had to look at how do we make sure that when the client is going to our client Stifel Wealth Tracker and, let's say, moving money, how does the advisor know that's happening? And that's what we service up in the Salesforce application. We use the Salesforce application then to pull in the pertinent data from our client application so that the advisor is always aware of what's going on in that relationship. Nothing worse than being an advisor and getting caught with not understanding exactly what's happening with the relationship with your client. So as we use our client portal and we allow things like aggregating outside assets, bringing different pieces in, we allow the advisor to view all of that. They self-service their clients in some cases on both of those platforms. And Salesforce has been good at things like, we want to service our clients. So my client can go out and enroll online to the client platform, But what if they don't want to? They're too busy. They expect the sales assistant of the team to do that. We allow that, an interface in Salesforce, to sign up for the client and go as far as they can, and then connect to the client platform. So trying to bring those two things together and really understanding what is important for the advisor to know about the relationship whenever the client is online. Salesforce has allowed us to do that, again, at the relationship level. So in the old days, they would, in order to know that, they'd have to go to 3 platforms before they could even answer the question after the word hello. So it'd be like, oh, I have to call you back, whatever it might be. I always tell our advisors, our job and our goal is to make them the smartest people on earth, right? So when that call comes in, they know everything that's going on from a professional managing that portfolio down to a personal piece, right? This person's son had a soccer game last night. I want to make sure they know that. So anything we can give them to ignite that relationship, the better.
So advisors are not the only users in the system, right? So we've spoken a lot about them. They're clearly supported by, Stifel has 2,000-ish advisors, as I recall, right? And even more client service associates. So as you think about the 2 personas, the 2 roles, in your mind, what's important to the CSAs and how have you focused on them throughout the implementation as well?
Sure. They're super important in this process. The CSA is the first line of defense. When someone calls in, they always talk to the CSA first, the client service associate. Sometimes they'll be like, I don't want to bother my broker, he's watching my money, right? He needs to watch the market, I'm doing this piece. So looking at our advisors and their assistants as teams, this platform has really helped that from that aspect. So I'll give an example of, we have a team of 13 people, and they kind of talk to us about the fact that since this information is all there, they are so much more efficient from this aspect. So they know they used to meet in the morning for 2 hours every day to talk about all their accounts. They don't have to do that anymore. They don't have to interrupt each other throughout the day. So our CSAs are part of what we call a super user group. So when the teams develop new functionality, new pieces, we pull together this super user group and we show them what we've done, but we also let them in the system first to look at it, to try it, to do all of those pieces. The more we can get the CSAs to really use that system, the more the advisors are going to as well. And it really just brings that team together, if you will.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things is, you've already heard, we focused on the foundation first. Now we're listening to the advisors, seeing how they want to, what new features they want to see in Salesforce. Now we've heard about all this generative AI stuff. Inevitably, the advisors are going to be coming to us saying, how are we going to do this? So, that is something, all of our clients are thinking about. That's hot on everybody's mind at Dreamforce. And, some of the ways that we think, bringing generative AI to advisors in this space is going to be more, the median age range for an advisor at most places is on the higher side. So they're not the most tech savvy group. It adds to our adoption challenges. So one of the things that kind of excites me about generative AI is instead of having the users attend all these trainings, which we're great about doing, like Stifel has taken a really amazing approach to continuous training and adoption. But wouldn't it be cool one day where the advisor can log into Salesforce, there's a prompt of you type in whatever you want to see, show me all my clients that own Google because something's happened in the market. It returns all the list of clients and, oh, by the way, I want to send them all an email, and then it sends them a personalized email. All the advisor has to do is review the email, click send, done, a couple of clicks. And it's stuff that wouldn't be easy for them to do right now. Creating a report sometimes is a challenge. Creating a list view in Salesforce, that's going to be a challenge for an advisor. So I think that's kind of the exciting piece of some of the things that we could bring to them that would make using Salesforce a lot more easy, but also making them more efficient so they can spend that time focusing on their client and what they want to do. But kind of tell us a little bit more about what's next in the future of Salesforce and Stifel. What were some things that excite you?
Sure. Well, again, it's the fun stuff, right? So,
Wallpaper.
Yeah, it's really diving into the system and bringing in more and more functionality, and using some of the tools that Salesforce offers to enhance that experience. And when we think about things and we think about the broker and what they do from day to day, their time is very valuable, right? So how do we use the system to look at all the information that's there, right? They have all of this information about the client. They have the information about what's happening in the market, all of these pieces. How do we do things around this? And this is where the fun stuff comes in, right? With AI and different pieces to help with best next actions or bring up touch points, communication points, right? Advisors are always looking for communication points. They have to do segmentation today in their book and those pieces, and that's great, but it's not as helpful as really knowing split minute, something happened in the market, here's exactly who you need to contact, and here's what you need to address. And that's where I think the value really comes in and why it's important to have all of this foundational information, because it's time efficient. They're going to be able to reach out so much faster. You think about, implementing your market distribution or marketing distribution pieces. So even in that case, they know now with the click of a button, they can reach out to 500 people and make them feel comfortable about whatever's happening in the market. And we win there without a doubt.
Is there anything that surprised you along the way?
Well, yes. So when we
What?
first, right, so we did lots of discovery. Before we started. We did the surveys, we did all the pieces, and we were really happy with what we were implementing. We're like, this is gonna be awesome. And we went out and the feedback was brutal. It was not what we were looking for by any means. We were all proud of what we built. The advisors were like, here's why it doesn't work. And we had a roadmap, and we're like, we're gonna do all of these things in the next 12 months, everything's gonna be great. And we went to some of our highest producing offices and met with some of our best advisors and found really quickly that they're not gonna use it because it's not what they need. So we had to make the decision to stop our rollout, stop all of those pieces, get back to the drawing board and take in that advisor feedback and tweak what we've done. It wasn't like major rehaul of systems, but it was usability stuff that we didn't think about because we don't use it like that from day to day. So once we did that, we took 3 months and tweaked and perfected and did things like that and pushed that back out. I think that's one thing that has been a surprise to me. The other one is just listening to the advisors and their teams on some of the efficiencies that they've identified that we didn't even think about that were great. I had someone last week that said, it used to be throughout the day I'd get interrupted all day long because someone would say, hey, Carol, did so-and-so call, or did this happen, or did you send this report to this person, or do these pieces? She's like, now I don't get interrupted because everybody knows they go to the interactions tab, and that's exactly what's going on with that client. And there's none of that kind of, oh no moment from that aspect. And that was something that was a pleasant surprise. I was happy to hear that it's making their lives more efficient from that aspect. And collaborative.
Yeah.
Maybe one more parting piece of wisdom, and we'll go to Q&A. Tell me a little bit about what you might have advice for anybody, right? So I think you spoke a little bit about thinking from the user's perspective, right? From a user, we look at usability, right? We don't use the system day in, day out, so some of those items of usability we didn't think of. But what other pieces of advice might you have for somebody who's either just starting on their implementation, right? Or folks in here who've probably had Salesforce for 5, 10, 15 years.
Sure.
What pieces of advice do you have for them?
I think the biggest thing is to listen. And I know that sounds the cliche, right? But we get and our teams do this. So we have 10 teams that are working on these products. And when we bring them together and you try to tell them, like, this isn't working, do this piece, right? The advisors don't like this. They get very territorial. They get really kind of like, what do you mean? I built this great platform. This is what technology is. They don't know. But what we've done in that case in a lot of instances is we've brought the customer in to talk to the development teams and explain to them what their day is like and how things go and all of those pieces. And that's been great. You have to sometimes put aside your own pride in what you think your roadmap should be versus what your user wants. And I think that has been the key to our success in a lot of things along this technology kind of roadmap is we can't be scared to change. and we can't be scared to admit that what we thought was the thing isn't. And we do a lot of talking to different advisors from other firms, from other places, to really just understand what the customer wants and what's important to them. And that can be difficult sometimes, but I think you got to be willing to throw your ideas away to please your end user, and I think that's important.
Well, thank you.